Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for this first of our speaker series, Straight Talk. I'm Jeannie Michaelides. I'm the Director of Client Experience for Advanced Partners, and I'm coming to you today from my home in Cleveland, Ohio. First, I want to offer a very warm welcome to our current clients with us today, friends we've yet to meet, industry partners, and my Advanced Partners teammates. Thanks so much for taking the time. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes. Your mics are going to be muted during the presentation. If you have a question, please use the chat function on your screen. Our teammate and the man behind the magic screen, Alan Thurston in New York, will be looking at all the questions and asking them at the end of Jason's talk. Our presentation is being recorded today, and you will receive a copy of it afterward. Alan, are you with us? Can you say hello?
Hi, hello, I'm here. Happy to be part of the event today.
Great. We'll hear from you a little bit later. As many of you know, Advanced Partners, our number one goal is to help you grow. And we do this in many ways beyond our core funding services. Among them are sessions like this with our extra resources, insights, subject matter knowledge beyond our core funding. And today's speaker, Jason Kuhn, is coming to us from his home in Nashville, Tennessee. He's going to give us 3 of his 10 fundamentals of winning: confidence, mental toughness, and a team-first mind. Jason's stories are so compelling, and his lessons are really hard-won. First, as a Division I pitcher in baseball, and next as a Navy SEAL combat leader. And his message could not be more timely. We are all facing stress and uncertainty in our environment today. So please take this time, sit back, listen to Jason, learn from him how you overcome adversity. And I love how he puts this: fight the fight in front of you. So now it's my pleasure and it's my honor to introduce decorated Navy SEAL Jason Kuhn. Jason, first and foremost, thank you so much for your service. You are amazing. I've loved getting to know you over the last couple of weeks, and we're very excited you're with us today. The screen is all yours.
All right, hello, and thank you for having me. The thanks to service always goes to my wife. She had the hard job, I had the fun job. I got to run around and chase bad guys, and I learned a lot of lessons through those times, and I'm going to share some of them today. A little bit of a background on the Navy SEAL teams for those that may not be familiar with them. We get our name from the sea, air, and land. It's an acronym. So we're able to operate in the sea, we dive, we use boats, and as well as the air, we jump out of airplanes, use helicopters, whatever, and also are very proficient on the land. And we are the Navy's version of special operations. And our job was to conduct operations that were outside of the scope of the conventional military. So during that time, it was some of the best times of my life. And when I first came home, I was very uncomfortable sharing my stories because for me, it was never about that. I just wanted to serve my country. I wanted to do my job to the best of my ability. But when I came home, people started telling me or asking me, who knew of my background as both a baseball player and a SEAL, for advice on leadership, on mental toughness, you name it. So I became more comfortable as time went on. And as I travel around the country and I ask people about, or ask people what they want to know from me, it really comes down to one thing. If I were to generalize it into one thing, they say, what is it that makes you guys so good? And then how do I apply it to my team and then to my life? So sorry, I thought we had a technical issue there, but apparently we don't. We're good. Can everybody see me, hear me good? I saw those messages come through, but we're good, correct? All right. So as I travel around and we generalize this in one statement, it is, what makes you guys so good and how do I apply it to my life? And I saw a Navy SEAL speaking one time on TV being interviewed, and he said, it's not that we're that good, it's that everybody else sucks. And when I saw him say that, I kind of laughed for a minute, but then I started reflecting on what that meant to me. And as I thought about it, this is what it meant. As a young baseball player, and I was a pretty good one, but my standard was based in comparison to the competition, meaning I wanted to be a little bit better than the rest. I wanted to be better than the next guy. I wanted to be better than the other teams so that we could win our conference, and we did. But in the SEAL teams, that changed. When I got there, our standard was not, can we get a little bit better than the rest? It was, how good can we get? And maximization of potential was best. And that was the standard that we chased each day. And the way we maximize potential, in my opinion, was we had an ability, we were trained to relentlessly execute fundamentals under extreme stress. Meaning no matter what was going on around us, we would focus on what we can affect or what we can control. No matter if I had a malfunction with my parachute or my dive rig, whatever it may be, we would work the problem and focus on what we can control. And what I learned is that in gunfights or any situation like that that is dynamic, you can't force results. You can't force winning. All right, if you could, you would have won at everything you've ever done. And therefore, there would be no such thing as competition. So we don't force things. We influence them. We influence winning and success, and we influence it to the greatest degree possible by demanding perfection of everything within our control. I call that eliminating the variables. There's all these things we can't control, but by focusing on what we can and demanding perfection of those things is what eliminates the variables and stacks the odds in our favor. But it's important to understand these fundamental processes. Controllable actions of value exist not only in how we do what we do. For me, that's how I shoot my weapon, how I communicate on my radio, whatever, but there's also fundamentals to how we think and our mindset and culture and how we treat each other. All right, so putting all those together is what creates best. I call it mechanics, right? How we do what we do, mindset, how we think, and then culture, how we treat each other. And all three have to work together. And I believe I can prove that, because if you think of it like this, I could take pretty much anyone out on this panel and teach you how to dive, how to jump, how to shoot a weapon. It's really not all that difficult, but that doesn't make you a special operator. I've still got to know that you can respond when things are unfair, when things are very difficult, and adversity. I've got to know as a team, you're the type of person that's going to come together and shift your focus towards your teammates rather than fall apart and retreat to self-preservation, because those are the things that truly made us special. And I believe a relentless pursuit of that standard is what builds a desire. It builds pride, it builds a swagger and a desire to fight for each other. And those habits have to start today. You see, being tough, learning how to focus on what you can affect, it's a learned behavior. It was something that was trained into us. And what we do today makes us who we are when it matters most. The habits we create today make us who we are when it matters most. And although we can't force results, we can fight for them. And we fight for them without moderation, because moderation is for cowards. And it's how winning is done. And it pays to be a winner. And before I became a Navy SEAL and learned a lot of these lessons, I was a baseball player. And that's all I ever wanted to do with my life, was to become a Major League Baseball player. And I was well on my path. And I want to talk about what I learned about confidence through my failure in baseball. Right, so I was pitching for a top 25 nationally ranked Division I baseball team. I was a closing style pitcher. I would come in at the end of the game and come in high pressure situations. And I prided my ability to execute in those situations. About 6 months before the Major League draft, and I was going to secure my dream of being a professional baseball player. It was all going to come true. Everybody that didn't believe in me, I was going to stick it to them, right? Like, all right, I made it. I developed what's known as performance anxiety. In baseball, we call it the yips. And it's a subconscious anxiety. And as I would go to throw the baseball, my arm would seize with tension, and I was unable to throw the baseball. I would lose control, lose dexterity, and lose control. In fact, I threw 6 wild pitches in a single inning, which is an NCAA Division I record in 2001 that still stands. So 19 years plus, and I'm that guy. And when that happened, that was the last competitive game of baseball that I ever played. And when that happened, it almost broke me. I was devastated, I was embarrassed, and I was completely lost. I had no idea what to do with myself. I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and in the moment it was. But here's some things I learned from that failure. I did something first that I hadn't done in a long time. I was a tough kid, and I overcame a lot of adversity to get to that point. But when this happened, I started to feel sorry for myself, and I allowed self-pity to creep in, and I allowed self-loathing to drive my action. And I woke up one day in my hallway in my apartment, face down with all my clothes on, and I couldn't remember the last 3 days because I drank them away. And when I woke up, I remember thinking to myself, man, this thing, it happened to you. It is what it is. Is it going to define who you're going to be for the rest of your life? And I knew right then and there that I wanted to make a change and needed to make a change. And the lesson that I learned was that victimhood produces more victimhood. Right? Self-pity is a worthless emotion in an effort to win. It's not immoral, there's nothing wrong with it, but allowing it to drive your next action simply produces no value. It's utterly worthless. So if we look at the situation we're in right now with the coronavirus and all the different effects and the different dynamics of everyone listening, people are hurting, and I get that, okay, but it is what it is. And we have to refuse self-pity, and we have to look forward and move forward into the fight. And the next thing that I learned was this: is I stopped and I prayed. And I just said, God, give me something, some sort of peace, some sort of direction. I'm broken, I'm lost. And I felt these words come across my soul. And it was, just wait, you're meant for something better. And I recognized in that moment that baseball defined me, meaning I was dependent on it for my sense of self-worth. And when I left for the Navy with the intent of becoming a Navy SEAL, I wasn't going to let it define me. What I do no longer defines who I am. Who I am defines what I do. No matter what the circumstances is no matter what kind of mission I'm on, I'm going to allow my character to create my success. And I think that's what really drove me through training. You know, in BUDS, we have a week called Hell Week. BUDS is SEAL training, basic underwater demolition SEAL training. And there's a week in that training known as Hell Week. And it's 5.5 days, and you sleep for 4 hours that entire week. So 2 hours on Wednesday and 2 hours on Thursday. You're wet, you're cold, and you're near hypothermic levels that entire week. My class started with 135 men or so, and we graduated Hell Week with 20 of them. And I truly believe a lot of the experiences that I faced in baseball, to include the lessons learned in that failure, is what helped drive me forward to be successful there. And here's what I learned about confidence. I learned that confidence is certainty. That's how I define it. And certainty is gained from where we place our trust. But here's the blind spots. As human beings, we often place our trust in two things that we can't control. And those two things are critics and the odds. All right? Critics, what other people think and say about us. And we allow them to imprison our belief of what we're capable of accomplishing. I know I was like that, not with everyone. Okay, for a lot of people, I'll prove you wrong, but there were certain people in my life that I allowed affect me maybe a little bit too much and imprison me a little bit too much. But I really believe this. I believe every human being is born with intrinsic purpose, and you don't need anybody's permission to honor that, just the courage to try. And that courage is what gives you freedom from that imprisonment, and you gain your courage from that purpose, that why you do what you do. I noticed this: anything hard that I've ever tried to do, people will give you 1,000 reasons why you can't do it. They will sit around the table and inspire themselves to do nothing. But winners find one reason why they can. They find an excuse to win, and you only need one. When I said, hey, I'm going to go into the Navy, I'm going to become a Navy SEAL, 9/11 had just happened. It made me mad. I wanted to fight about it. I wanted to provide justice for those who died. I found purpose. I found direction. I knew everything coming into my life was pointing me that way. And a lot of people told me that I shouldn't do it. They said, how are you going to do this? You've got a mental issue. You can't throw a baseball properly. How are you going to graduate the most difficult training in the world? But it wasn't up to them. They only have the power that I allow them to have. All right. So we want to value what people think and say about us for self-awareness, but never allow it to imprison us. The next thing I had to face was the odds. I understood that BUDS has a 70 to 80% attrition rate, meaning that many people go there and fail. Most people quit the training. You've got to ring a bell 3 times and say, I quit, and that's it, and then you're done. And that's what most people do. And when I looked at the odds, I wasn't going to allow them to define my success either. If we look at this, hey man, this is bad, this situation is tough, or it could be our greatest moment, right? Because it's the difficulty that provides us that joy in overcoming it. And I knew that I could kind of just check out. I could go get a job. I could go do something that was easy. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I also knew that my purpose was for something greater at this point in my life. And if I denied that, I was denying the very essence of who I was. And the easy path would have made me comfortable. It would have been easy. It would have been comfortable, but it wouldn't have provided joy. It's the hard path that provides that joy in overcoming those odds. And I knew that I had to value time, that one day I would look back on this moment and I would wonder if I was proud of the decision that I made. We get one life to live, and we're on a running clock, and we don't know how much we have. So I knew that I would rather die in combat, doing what I love with the people that I love, or fail in training than look back and wish I had at least tried. So that's what I would say now, as we're in this moment right now, no matter how dire it may seem, engage the fight, move forward, let it be your best moment. And if something bad does happen, let it forge you into a stronger person. Like I said, when baseball ended for me, I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened. Now I look at it as the best thing, because without it, I would have never been able to accomplish more, because I became more through it. Winners place their trust to gain true certainty that has no external dependency and sources they can create. One is our preparation. We have attention to detail. We were taught to do things, the controllable things, the right way or again, until you cannot get them wrong. And we were taught to give relentless effort, all right, to go as hard as you can. I call that changing your normal. When I was a high school baseball player, I worked hard. When I got to college and played Division I baseball, I worked harder. And when I got to the SEAL teams, work ethic was really, maximized. But it didn't mean that I didn't have it in me when I was younger. I was just introduced to a new standard, right? That standard of relentless effort. And I learned this through swims. We had to do 2-mile ocean swims in open ocean and cold water. I was completing the swims, but I was failing the time. And if I failed the time one more time, I was going to get removed from my class. So I thought, I'm just going to swim as fast as I can until I throw up. And then I'm going to try to swim faster. And that's exactly what I did. And I passed that swim. Now, we had more swims to do, but the thing was, if I could do it once, I could do it twice. And if I could do it twice, I could do it as many times as I wanted. I just had to ask myself, is what I want worth it to me? See, that's where discipline comes in. Everybody desires, but desire doesn't separate us from anyone. Discipline does. And desire fuels that discipline. So when I wake up and I think, man, this is too hard, it feels overwhelming, I need to do this, that, or the other thing, you got to think about what you want, what it is you're fighting for, and then allow that to fuel your effort. And it'll give you certainty in the moment. When you've out-prepared your opponents, you'll be confident, because one of our instructors said, don't forget why we're doing what we're doing. Right before Hell Week started, he said that. He said, today there's a man training to kill you, and one day you're going to meet that man. But when you do, you're going to know without a doubt that you're better prepared than he is for this day. So earn your preparation, and you can trust it. Trust each other by surrounding yourselves with the right people. In your business, you need to hire the right people, promote the right people, not just in skill sets, but also in character traits. Who you confide in your family, whatever, surround yourself with the right people, because we never sacrifice character for talent. That's why we had Hell Week. It is attrition by design. So we had one of our best performers, one of the biggest, strongest, fastest guys in the training. I watched him cry tears and quit on Monday morning at Hell Week, and I was happy to watch that man quit, because when things got difficult, he would retreat to self-preservation. He would complain. He would blame other people, right? And he's going to be worthless in a gunfight. Even though he can do everything that Navy SEALs do, in a sense, very well when things are calm and comfortable, he's of absolutely no value when things get difficult, and they will get difficult. So there's no purpose in having him there. We never sacrifice character for talent, because character is priceless when it's time to hold the line. And talent is worthless when it drops its gun and runs away. Place your trust in your conviction and purpose. that there's purpose to your life, there's purpose to the things that you go through, to include this difficult time right now and be forged, never broken. Believe that short-term failures and adversities are necessary to produce long-term success. And what I tell teams all the time is when we have an opportunity to go through a difficult time, when we have an opportunity to fail at something, we want to be forged by it. So by the end of our career, we're a much stronger person and team than we were at the beginning, so that it's a constant evolution of getting better. And without these adversities, even if something very difficult happens with our business or we lose it, maybe that's your opportunity to be forged into something even better and create the next biggest and greatest thing. But don't let it break you. You got to stay in the fight, and it's not easy. But for the first time, when I left for the SEAL teams, I knew for the first time exactly who I was. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I knew exactly why I wanted it. And that's what today I allow to fuel me into the things. No matter what's happening to me, that's what fuels me. And allow it to fuel you too, because the fight is not easy, but you got to be on a warpath. You can't hope. Hope is a beggar. You've got to go hunt it down, and you got to be willing to take the hits along the way and be mentally tough. Mental toughness to me is really pretty simple. It's just a shift of focus. All right, when adversity hits, when things are uncontrollable and they're unfair, and that's how I define adversity, right? We shift our focus off of that initial disappointment and that thing that we can't control and back into two things, the process and the people. And the best way not to fear adversity, we got a lot of unknowns in the world right now, right? But the best way not to fear it is to understand the value that it provides for us in our lives. All right. Adversity creates a struggle, and the struggle creates reward. And there is no reward without the struggle. That's why our instructors taught us, they would say, embrace the suck. The harder this is, the stronger you become. Now, it doesn't make it easy. That pain is still real. But the thing to think about is the greater the struggle, the greater the reward. So the harder this gets, the greater joy you're going to have if and when you overcome, and the stronger you're going to get. The thing is a lot of your competitors and a lot of people are going to live their whole lives this way. They're going to be emotionally reactive to situations, all right? And they're going to allow their emotions, how they feel about something, to dictate what they do next. But mentally tough people, they interrupt that cycle. They stonewall it. They stop it there, and they insert thought and action of value. You see, in adversity, we can control two things: how we react and what we do next. And what we do next will either have value or no value. And to me, it's that simple. And the way to have value in our response is to shift our focus into those two things: process and people. What do I need to do to win the fight in front of me and my teammates next to me? And where I learned this lesson was in the most dangerous situation I ever found myself in. And we were deployed overseas. We were on the last day of deployment. Right before this deployment, my daughter was born, and I spent 3 weeks with her. And what may have been harder than Hell Week was handing my little girl over to my wife and getting on the airplane to go overseas. That was tough. But now we're about to come home, and they told us we'd been on our last operation. And then they come back in and they say, you've got to go back out on one more operation. So we go in, and I was a team leader. I was a reconnaissance team leader, and our mission was to kill or capture a senior level terrorist leader who did horrible things to horrible people. So we go in and start planning our mission. The intelligence department says, hey, you know what? We're not really sure how dangerous it is out there. It doesn't look like there's a lot of activity. Just get in, get out, keep everybody safe. Let's go home tomorrow. Nice and easy, right? We were supposed to have left already, as I mentioned, and I got my team cut down. I don't want to get into numbers too much or tactics, but it came down to myself, one other SEAL, and one local soldier, which was much less than we would normally have. And we had a larger group that was going to come in a little bit behind us. This is an urban environment. We take off through the city. As we get to where we're going, my teammate is setting up some equipment. We're going to get on top of a structure and provide an overwatch for the men who will come and then attack the safe house where we believe this person is staying. As we are doing this, some people wake up. One man in particular wakes up first. He grabs an AK-47, points it right at us. Once we were 100% sure he intended to kill us, we engaged him and he went down. So now we're in a contact with the enemy. When we start shooting at each other and getting all rowdy, we're in contact, and we call it the direction, contact front. So contact front. It's also not our first rodeo, so we break straight into our playbook. We've ran them so many times we can't get them wrong. My buddy moves behind me. I move into the contact to attempt to suppress it, but there's a little bit too much. There's 4 to 5 shooters. I'm alive today because they missed with the initial volley. I couldn't suppress the contact, so I dropped to my belly. I'm crawling to my teammate. He tells me to stop and go back from where I came. So I start crawling backwards to where I came from. There's a road offset, and I know the enemy's going to attempt to flank us, probably. So I crawl through some trash. I poke my head around the corner. Sure enough, there's about 10 to 15 fighters moving down the street, and I attempt to engage them. Now we've got a contact right, and I'm basically trying to go back and forth. We're trying to break contact, but we're unable to, and we're going to defend in place and call the other guys up to us. As this is happening, at one point, my teammate calls in and he says, Jason is pinned down and you guys need to get up here now. Now, at no point did I ever feel like we were losing, but and I don't like to admit that I was pinned down, right? I just say that I couldn't move left or right or up or down without help. And so my teammate calls in that I'm pinned down. And when I heard that come over the headset is when everything slowed down, time slowed down. And I want to tell you what I thought about in this moment, what went through my mind, because this was trained, all right? So what came through my mind first was the actions that I take next are literally going to determine whether I live or die. But the thing to note there is that the actions that I take next are the only thing that I have absolute control of, right? I can't force the enemy to do this or to do that. I can only influence it through the action that I take next. All right, and so the same thing for you right now. You cannot control what has happened, it's over, but you can control today and tomorrow, what you do next. Tomorrow has not been written in history yet, right? And there is the emotion that's involved. My mind immediately went to the outcome, right? What if I die? What if I get shot? I remember telling myself to embrace for impact because there were a lot of rounds coming in. I never did get hit. But I remember preparing for it. And I remember thinking of my little girl. This all happens in a flash. And I remember transitioning. I harnessed it and I turned it into aggression. Rather than allowing it to create fear, I channeled it back into the process. And I remember thinking, no, you're not going to take me. And if you do, you're going to earn it. I'm going to take as many of you with me as I possibly can. But I'm not going to die out here hiding behind a pile of rocks. I'm going to fight. I'm going to leave my legacy. I'm going to do what I came here to do. I chose to come here and be a warrior, a SEAL. So do what you came here to do, right? This is your chance right here. Don't miss your chance. And that's the thing, is that sometimes when these things seem very dire, it's also a chance to do something special. And so I focused my channel back into the process. What do I need to do to win today, to win the fight in front of me? And because my training was so strong, the men who trained me saved my life, right? I knew exactly what I needed to do and I began executing. And then I shifted my focus into my teammate. I looked over and I saw him. He's moving around to different positions. He's calling back to the guys. He's shouting out instructions to me. He was fighting for me. He could have left me in that moment and I wouldn't have blamed him if he had, but he didn't. And I knew that he wouldn't. And that gave me confidence. That gave me certainty. That helped me focus on what I was doing and be mentally tough. And when I saw him fighting for me in that moment, fear went away and was replaced with trust and love and aggression. You shoot at me, you better not miss, man. Just shoot at my buddy, right? And we'll hunt you down. That's how we feel about each other. But that feeling was earned through the standard lived in our preparation. You see, gunfights often are won well before the first shot is fired. Again, back to mechanics, how we do what we do, and so we can't get it wrong. How we think so that we're able to shift into process, and how we treat each other each and every day so that those habits come to fruition when it matters most. And that's what kept us alive. My teammates came up, the rest of the guys get there, they're able to throw some grenades and provide some cover fire, and I link back up with them. And now we're going to assault the area that we just got shot away from. And I was scared, and I was going to go in first because I had seen it. So it made tactical sense for me to go first, but I was scared. I focused on my laser on the gate to drown out the noise, micro focus. And then I remember thinking this, I took a deep breath in and a deep breath out. I let go of what just happened. I'm releasing attention. I'm releasing emotional attachment and locking into right now to win the fight in front of me. Let go, lock in, win the fight in front of you, because I'm not the only one going in that gate, right? So it is selfish for me to be any other version than my best before I go in. And that's what I challenge people to do. Let go of what's happened. It's over, right? Lock in, win the fight in front of you. Shift your focus into process and then people. Why does it matter if we shift our focus into each other? How does that help us perform better? You see, the team first mind, a selfless nature, will help you perform better at your individual task. It's not just a morally correct narrative. It helps you become better, and here's how. All right, I believe there's 2 performance values in the team first mind. Think of it like this. Every day we show up, we have one of 2 motivations. We can operate out of status, right? When I want to be a big deal. I want everyone to know what I'm doing. Praise from others. Or, and that's different from goal setting. You should have goals that you want to accomplish. But when your why, your driven, your purpose is for that status, it drives failure. And the reason why it drives failure is because you cannot control what other people think about you. And when you try to force something you can't control, you create pressure. Where a pressure did not exist, you birthed it right there, which evolves into stress, and you're constantly under that. And a lot of times this isn't in an arrogant narrative, meaning, I want status because I'm think I'm a big deal, like the guy that quit in our training I was telling you about. A lot of times it comes in a need for affirmation. You see, every human being has a need for significance in their life. I do, you do, everyone does. But it can cross a line sometimes. I learned that about myself in sniper school. I got sent to sniper school as a young new Navy SEAL, and it's normally reserved for seasoned guys. But with the wars and everything, I got to go. So I get there. These guys were everything I want to be one day, man. I looked up to them. I wanted to be like them. And when I shot on my own, I was pretty good. And when I would get around them, I would really struggle. One of the instructors came up to me and he said, "Hey, man, if you don't believe in yourself, then why should anybody else? Quit worrying about the company you're in. I've seen you shoot by yourself and you're good, and we need snipers. So give your best to the team and quit shooting for affirmation for the other people." And it changed the course of my career from there, because what I learned to do was just embrace my God-given best and give it to the team. And when I did that, I did really well. In fact, after that school, I got to go to an advanced sniper school with my team, another teammate, and we won it. We won the top sniper competition. But nothing changed much. Of course, you always learn a little bit and whatever, but nothing drastic changed about the mechanics of how I fired my weapon. The only thing that changed was what I was playing for, what I was working for, operating for. And when I shifted to just taking my best and giving it to my team, my performance increased, right? So it has a direct correlation to how well we can do something. And this is what a team first mind does when we serve each other without expectation of anything in return. Doesn't mean you won't get anything in return, but for it to be selfless, you can't have an attachment. When we act that way, it reduces anxiety to a minimal level. Here's how. If I get nervous before a combat operation, I get nervous for my own life and death, right? So that anxiety, it's like a parasite feeding off of misplaced concern. If I defer my concern to the well-being of teammate and mission accomplishment, then that anxiety's got nothing to feed upon. We've only got so much bandwidth here. I'm focused on this or I'm focused on that. So if I shift it into others, I'm not worried about what may happen to me. And when we act that way, we then create the emotions of trust, respect, love for each other. But you have to act it and then you feel it. You see, we want it the other way around. A lot of teams I've worked with want it the other way around. We put family and togetherness on our core values and on our signs in our office, but we have to live it to feel it. And then it becomes something that is real. And it's the most effective thing on the face of the earth. Think of it like this. If I were to give you the opportunity to fight me, and if you beat me up, you could tell everybody that you're tougher than a Navy SEAL. You could have that status. Most people would not want to engage that battle. But if you think of the person you love the most in this world, and if I had that person behind me and you had to come through me to get to them or you would never see them again, would you fight me now? Pretty much everybody would. But the problem didn't change. It's still me and whatever you assume my ability to be, right? All that changed was the motivation going into the problem. Because in this one, you're fighting for something that you love, something that's greater than yourself. But that feeling was created through your interaction and the standard you live, whether that's your family member or a work colleague or whoever that is, right? But we have to act it and then we feel it. And that's the thing that that's the question every team has to ask themselves. Are we going to work against each other? Most teams don't do that. Are we going to work with each other? That's what most teams do. That's the status quo. But we're not talking about being good. We're not talking about being average. We're talking about being elite. Elite teams work for each other. And we're all in this together. We've all got kids running around and being crazy. We've all got problems. The dynamics of your situation are different, but this thing, we're all in it together. So how many times do we really call each other, not just on the schedule calls, but say, hey man, how are you doing? Right? Really experience some true empathy and connect with each other. Right? And if we do that, just little things, it can have so much value because you're building trust. And trust is the number one thing it's how a team works. You don't have to like each other. You know, we were the ultimate brotherhood, they say. Okay? But there was Navy SEALs I didn't like, still don't, probably never will, but I trust them all. I'm trying to go to war with every single one of them. Brotherhood doesn't mean we like each other. It means we set aside our differences to serve a greater cause. When my teammates told me that they were going to do something, they were going to do it. Man, and that's the thing that I miss the most about the teams. And it's a simple thing that we can all do if we all commit ourselves to it. But we have to do it until it becomes habit, innate in our character, because it's not natural. When things are hard, we default to survival instinct, self-preservation. So to avoid that, when we were on patrol, we were taught to say these things in our mind. If I get shot at right now, what will I do to support my buddy? We would say it in our mind over and over again. What will I do? What is the process I need to create? I need to act upon to support my buddy, mind off self and on teammate. And it works. So every day, that would be my challenge with your family and with your business people, the people you work with every day, your colleagues. I would say, what have I done for my team today? Just something simple, even if it's just asking them how they're doing, until it becomes innate in your character. And I'll finish with this story. My same buddy, that same teammate that was in that fight with me was on a helicopter. I was on another helicopter. We were going to take down a ship on a training operation. My helicopter came in and we dropped ropes and slid down them onto the ship. And when we came around the corner of his helicopter crashed into the ship and caught on fire. I had other friends up there too. When I got to the crash site and I saw my buddy wounded, he was our most experienced medic. And we said, how do we fix you? And he started telling us how to treat all of the other wounded. Pretty much everyone was wounded. And he started telling us how to treat all of the other wounded first. He had shattered his hips in 3 places, completely in half. But we couldn't really tell how bad he was. And he starts telling us how to treat all the other people. We do that. And then he says, hey, man, he said, yeah, he goes, I think I have internal bleeding. The fractured bones in my pelvis have probably cut my femoral artery, and I'm going to bleed to death in 20 minutes if you don't get me off this ship. And we did. He's alive today. But the thing that's fascinating to me about that story, because I was there, I can see his face, and is, that's not a decision that's made in the moment. Selflessness was a trait he had made innate in his character until he didn't know how to be anything different. It was his habit. It was a part of who he was, right? And you may ask, what's the value in that, the performance value? And it's a fair question. It's trust, right? It's trust. When you look at a man and you know that he would die for you without hesitation, you trust that man. And that is what gives you the courage to get back out in the fight and win the fight in front of you. It's how winning is done, and it pays to be a winner. You know, his life was on a running clock, and he didn't know how much time he had, and he still selflessly shifted his focus onto his teammates. And I'll leave you with this. You know, people ask sometimes, how do you find purpose outside of the SEAL teams when you've gotten to do those wonderful things? And it can be difficult at times, but I think, man, there's guys that have done so much more than me. I did about 10 years. Guys have done 20 plus years and have so much more experience. And a lot of guys didn't come home. And the best way to honor them is living a life worth dying for, right? At least we're here. As hard as it is right now, at least we're here. And the moment will pass. And when it does, are we going to be proud of who we were and what we did and be forged into something stronger? It's how winning is done, and it pays to be a winner. Thank you guys very much. I'll turn the screen and the panel back over, and I will take questions as well. I'll be happy to answer anyone's questions. I hope you found some value and enjoyed that.
Great. Thanks so much, Jason. Alan, do we have some questions that came in during his talk?
Hi, Jeannie. Hi, Jason. Thank you again, Jason. Wow, some great information there. So we have a couple of questions that came in. Also, we have some other questions. You know, if anyone on the line wants to ask Jason, you know, keep on having the questions come in, and we'd be happy to answer any of those as we go through here. So the first question that I want to ask here, it states, this is from John, it says, I've seen a lot of information lately about business continuity planning. It's to help in the event of a business interruption. Are you impacted by coronavirus? They say, we are heavily impacted by coronavirus, but I don't have a plan in place yet. Is it too late to have a plan in place? Jason, thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, you're never out of the fight, right? So if you're still in it, let's say if you feel pain, that's good, because that means you're still alive. And if you're still alive, you're still in the fight. If you're still in the fight, you can still win. So it's never too late to start planning, for sure. And the thing with planning in this situation that is similar to a combat environment, if you will, is there's a lot of unknowns, right? We don't know, and each state is different. You got the federal government, you got a lot of information coming in and out about when we're going to open up, when this, when that, and then the specifics of your company as well. And you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, if you will, in terms of making decisions as best you can with incomplete information. And then we say, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So you have to learn to adapt and overcome. We'll make a plan, and we'll also make contingencies. So for instance, we won't overthink everything. You can become paralyzed by over planning, but we'll think on this phase of the operation, what is the enemy most likely to do to us? What would we do to ourselves to stop us from accomplishing our mission? And then draw out a plan for that as well. So we can go through either fork of the road if we need to. If a vehicle gets blown up by a bomb or something like that, who's going to move to what vehicle, and how are we going to carry on with our mission and succeed anyways? So having make your plan, and then have some contingencies built in, because you are working on incomplete information. And then when that information changes, you've got to adapt and overcome. And some ways to help with that is by empowering junior members. There's some steps that need to be in place for empowerment to work properly. But if you have the right people in place and training and whatever, and they can make decisions, that's good. And then also, I think, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but with the, don't get too emotionally attached to your plan, so that when you have to adapt, and it's like, oh, we did all of this and that and the other thing, and now it's all changing, woe is me, right? That happens to us all the time. You just work the problem.
Great, thank you. That's amazing information, Jason. So next question is from Steve. He says, when planning how to confront and overcome an obstacle or issue, can you generally point to 3 things you should always consider when forming a plan of attack?
One thing that we would do, so as I said, our operations were outside the scope of the conventional military. So sometimes they weren't always that way. Sometimes they were conventional operations. We would just, do them well, I guess. But and not that they didn't, but ones that were different, that had moving parts and whatever. What we would do is we would draw the outcome that we wanted on the board. So this is what we want to have happen. And then we would reverse engineer it. So from there, we start drawing out the processes that we need to have in place to accomplish that. So you think, hey, you know what? Coronavirus hit and it put us, this is our status right here. This is where we're at. This is where we want to be. And then you just start connecting the dots. And it may be hard to do at first. Sometimes we don't have the assets that we need. We don't have the kind of helicopters we need. We don't have the amount of people we need. So what do we need to do to obtain them, right? And so sometimes those processes become very micro in nature, but our mentality was never, can it be done? It was, how are we going to do it? And we would think very outside the box often to accomplish these things, right? Almost always there's a way to get it done. And then risk versus reward, I mean, sometimes that planning can be involved, and it may be time to just sit tight. It doesn't mean you have to engage very aggressively and take all of this risk. Everyone, like I said, I'm sure there's some people that are run dry right now, and others who are, you are not figuring out what the best play is. If you have revenue, if you're good and comfortable, it may be best, I don't know, to just wait a little bit. But as long as it's done strategically, right?
Great. Yeah, good information. So moving on, we have a few more questions. Mila on the line asks, what was the biggest challenge to changing your mindset to not default to self-preservation?
The training and buds, everything we do almost is as a team. So even when we would go run to eat at the chow hall, the cafeteria, it was a race. It was a mile to get there. So to eat 3 meals a day, you would run 6 miles, and you would run with a boat on your head, a big heavy boat. I forget how much they weigh, hundreds of pounds. And you would have anywhere from 6 to 8 guys in your boat crew or your team, and you would race. If your team won the race, you got to go in and eat. If you didn't win the race, you had to run laps around the chow hall and get sprayed with water, and punished for not winning the race. But everything was done as a team. Almost everything was done as a team. So as a baseball player, it was much that way. I loved being on a team, learned a lot about teamwork. But in buds, we really learned why it matters, okay? Not just because it feels good, but how it helps improve performance. And then two, that it's necessary. We had to rely on each other for survival. So when I say that, being selfless does all these wonderful things for us, and we need to be a brotherhood or whatever, family, whatever you want to call that term, that of trust, it's easier for us in combat because there's an underlying force that drives it, which is survival, right? We have to. And other situations and other competitive environments, it is more difficult of a choice because it's not life and death. Combat creates pure perspective, in my opinion. But even though it's a harder choice for people outside of a combat environment, the principles are the same. So a word I like to use is intentional. And don't be overwhelmed with it. Don't be like, I've got to be this most selfless person in the world. Just be intentional about doing 1 or 2 small things that are selfless in nature each day, and then build from that.
Great. Good response there. Dominique asks, she says that she appreciates the idea that an elite team works for one another. And she asks, in some of these situations, she finds herself managing competing priorities and having to choose between the work team and the family team. How do you set those priorities in your life?
Well, for me, family's always going to come before work. I haven't always been that way, and I regret the times that I haven't been that way. I try to justify it through certain means, but I'm a man of faith, and through that, if I'm putting in the appropriate amount of work and work ethic, then things are going to be fine and have proven to always be fine when I do it that way. That being said, we're all in this. So one, don't be too hard on yourself about it. We've all got kids and family running around, and just to be very real with you, that's what we want to be, right? Be authentic and real. Like me and my wife, we were at it. She had something going on, and we switched plans, and now she's got to pack the kids to get out. We forget. He's like, right, Sam, I'm sure other people too, to be on this presentation right here, right now, right? But we're all going through these things. We're all adapting to it, and it's not easy. So one thing I found myself doing is I'm trying to do it all at once sometimes. So I'm working and I'm trying to engage my kid, and I'm working and I'm trying to engage my kid. And what I've tried to do now is be more intentional about my time. So for this period of time, I'm going to work hard and get my work done. And then right around this period of time, I'm going to put all this away, and I'm not going to try to be on my phone and answer an email and play with my kid and do whatever. I'm going to play with my kid and give him my undivided attention. And I've noticed as I do that, and I'm not a psychologist or a child therapist, but I've noticed when I do that, they seem to be more satisfied as well. But you're not going to be able to be a full-time homeschool teacher and a full-time employee and a full-time, mother or father in the same way you were before this, because there's just not enough time in the day to be that way. So you've got to just prioritize it as it fits your situation, and then execute it and adjust as necessary. But don't put too much pressure on yourself. I got to be 8 hours locked into work. I got to be 4 hours locked into. It's just, you're running out of time. So we've all got to adapt.
Great. Good info. So next question we have is actually from Matthew. He says this information is awesome. And he also says that what are some things that we can do daily or weekly to help build our mental toughness?
Yeah, sure. To build mental toughness, I think you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, right? So if you've heard the term comfort zones, I think that comfort zones are selfish, self-imposed, and imaginary. They're not real, right? In a sense. So they're selfish because they limit what we're able to give to others, because we don't grow by getting into uncomfortable situations. So if you feel you need to build mental toughness, there's some simple things that you can do. So, I know you probably some people probably follow some other people, and they wake up at 3:15 in the morning and do a 2-hour workout. I don't, because everything hurts. I need to get going and loosen up a little bit in the morning, and I work better with sleep. So you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. So, but I will tell people sometimes, I'll be like, I want you to wake up at 5 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. for 2 weeks straight. The reason why is because I want them to build discipline or mental toughness, not because I think that waking up that early, has value outside of that. But what they're doing is they're setting up a situation that's uncomfortable. They're going to execute it. They're going to get a little bit tougher, and that can work. You can think there's lots of examples of where you can do that. If it's something with social, being social with people, whatever, then you put yourself in crowded situation. Not right now, but situations where you're you're in those areas where you don't like, because that's the only way you're going to get better at them. So put yourself in uncomfortable situations and do it as you feel is necessary. One thing that I don't like about what's going on right now with social media, I was going to mention this earlier, I forgot, is I called it social shaming, right? So you've got to learn 5 different languages, and you better be in the best shape of your life when you come out of the quarantine and whatever. Well, if that's something you want to do, absolutely. But it may also be time to rest. It may also be time to reflect. Whatever your situation is and what you need is what you need to do, right? So.
Yeah, great information. So moving on with our question, Gary actually has a question about some of your history with SEAL training. He asks, what specific drill or exercise during SEAL training weeded out the most people?
It depends, because it's different for everyone, as far as you're never going to be the best at everything, and you're going to have weak moments. And the idea is when you have those weak moments is to, put your head down, get through it, but really by focusing on other people. I think if I had to narrow it down to one thing for me, it would be the cold, being cold and wet. So that, you're constantly wet. You're in and out of the surf zone, and it's in Coronado, California, but there's that breeze on the beach. It can get brutally cold, and you do go into hypothermic stages at times. And for me, that was the most difficult part. For other guys, they get stress fractures in their legs, so it's the constant movement, they get whatever. But I think most guys would probably agree it's the cold water that is constantly on you over and over again that really breaks us down mentally the most. But again, it's all about focus, right? The more we're focused on one thing, the less we're focused on the other. So we go through training with our own officers, and we're the only place. I was enlisted, so when we do that, that's the only training in the military where you go through with your officers. Well, so many people had quit. Even though I was low ranking in the Navy, I became a boat crew leader. And it was the easiest week I had in BUD/S, because I had to get the instructions and then give it to my team. And I had to be concerned with my boat crew. And that's one way where I learned that lesson. I was so that week was over before I knew it, and it was easy because I hadn't had a chance to think about myself, right?
Great. Yeah, no, that's good. So one more question we have, Teresa asks that her and her team have been reaching out to their clients and different businesses to let them know that they are there to help. What would you recommend and suggest be their next step to show those businesses that they do care and that they're there to help them any way that they can?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a group I was with last week, someone asked a similar question where they say, I feel bad reaching out to our clients because I feel like I'm soliciting them in a time of need. So the first thing is to show true empathy and make it authentic in nature so that you're connecting with them, not just pitching to them, right? And as far as the next step, once that's accomplished, I would show what those processes are. And I'm thinking out loud here, but so instead of, hey, I really care about you, and this is, how are you doing? And then, hey, here's what we offer, and it's the same three things that you always offer them each and every day, right? Make it something that's more unique. So, hey, we really care about you, and I've put in some time. You don't have to say this necessarily, but they'll get it. Is I've put in some time to think about your unique situation and how this is getting to you. And I've come up with something that might be a unique solution to you. So instead of just 1, 2, 3, now we offer 4 and 5. And if those are of value to you, I'd be happy to discuss them with you and see if we can provide some solutions. So that's showing them that you are not just, we care, don't forget about us too, right? But it's, hey, we care, and I've actually put a little bit of time into coming up with something that's going to help you. That is something different than you've seen. Again, with 100 something, 200 people on the line, that's a very general analogy. It's not going to be specific unless I know your specifics.
Great. Thank you, Jason. And actually kind of leads into our final question here. It is, do you offer one-on-one mentoring?
Yeah, I do. I offer mentorship training with one-on-one or small groups, and consulting services with businesses. And I work quite a bit up in the New England area. I've got other presentations. Today we talked about confidence, mental toughness, and the performance value in a team first mind. There's others such as leadership, communication, how to process failure, how to never quit, you name it. So if you're interested in any of that, please feel free to contact me on any of the forms you see on the screen. I'm not a big social media guru, but I do put out content from time to time for people that want to follow there and get some of this information there completely free. It's all there. So
this was just great. Jason, thank you so much. Again, your service was amazing. And I want to remind everyone on our call that we're going to forward a recording of this. You can rewatch and learn from Jason all over again anytime you like. And we'll include his contact information in our email to you in case you don't manage to capture it today. Thank you. We're very grateful. Thank you all for being with us.
thank you.
Take care.